Deuteronomy 26 holds a special place in the Bible. This chapter is not just a collection of ancient words, it is a profound message that transcends time and culture. It's like a bridge between the past and the future, connecting the experiences of the Israelites with the lessons we can learn today. It's here that Moses gives instructions to the Israelites as they're about to enter the Promised Land. These instructions are not merely logistical, they are deeply spiritual and symbolic. After years of wandering in the desert, they are about to experience God's blessings in a tangible way. The transition from a life of scarcity to one of abundance is monumental. This chapter talks about offerings and tithes. These acts of giving are not just religious duties, they are expressions of faith and trust in God's provision. But it's about more than just giving things away. It's about remembering. It's about gratitude. The act of giving is intertwined with the act of remembering God's faithfulness. The Israelites are commanded to remember their journey. This remembrance is not a passive act. It is an active, intentional practice. They are to remember where they came from and how God rescued them from slavery. This collective memory shapes their identity and their relationship with God. This remembrance is key to understanding the offerings they are commanded to give. The offerings are a tangible expression of their gratitude and acknowledgement of God's sovereignty. Deuteronomy 26 is a powerful reminder of God's faithfulness. It calls us to reflect on our own lives and recognize the blessings we have received. It teaches us that gratitude and obedience go hand in hand. True gratitude is not just a feeling. It is demonstrated through our actions and our willingness to follow God's commands. It's a beautiful picture of how we should live our lives even today. By practicing gratitude and remembering our own journeys, we can cultivate a deeper sense of connection to our faith and to each other. In our fast-paced world, taking the time to reflect and give thanks can transform our perspective. It reminds us of the importance of community faith and the enduring lessons from ancient texts. As we set the stage for gratitude in our own lives, we create a ripple effect that can inspire and uplift those around us. Let us embrace the timeless wisdom of Deuteronomy 26 and make gratitude a cornerstone of our daily lives. Imagine a basket overflowing with fruits and grains, a sight that brings to mind the richness of the earth and the bounty it can produce. This is the image Deuteronomy 26 paints for us, a picture of abundance and blessing, a vivid portrayal of God's generosity and the land's fertility. The Israelites are instructed to bring this basket filled with the first fruits of their harvest to the house of the Lord. This act was a significant part of their religious practice. This act was more than just a ritual. It was a deeply meaningful tradition that connected them to their faith and to each other. It was a tangible way for the Israelites to acknowledge God's hand in their lives, recognizing that their prosperity was not by their efforts alone. It was a reminder that everything they had came from Him, a powerful symbol of dependence and trust in God's provision. The basket, overflowing with the goodness of the land, represented God's faithfulness. Each fruit and grain was a testament to His unwavering promise. It was a symbol of His promise to provide for His people, a visual assurance that He would always meet their needs. This act of bringing the first fruits was an act of worship. It was a sacred moment where the Israelites could express their devotion and reverence. It was a way for the Israelites to show their gratitude to God for His provision, a heartfelt thank you for the blessings they received. This practice fostered a sense of community and shared faith, reminding them of their collective reliance on God's grace and bounty. The gathering of the first fruits was also a time of celebration, a communal event where people came together to rejoice in the harvest and in God's goodness. Families would share meals, tell stories of God's faithfulness, and strengthen their bonds with one another, all while giving thanks for the abundance they enjoyed. This tradition, rooted in Scripture, served as a constant reminder of the covenant between God and His people, a covenant built on trust, faith, and gratitude. Even today, the principles behind this ancient practice can inspire us to recognize and celebrate the blessings in our own lives, fostering a spirit of thankfulness and community. Why the first fruits? Why not just give God whatever was left over? Bringing the first fruits meant giving God the best of what they had. It was a way of honoring him and acknowledging that he deserved their very best. It also showed their trust in God. By giving him the first portion of their harvest, they were demonstrating their faith that he would continue to provide for them. This principle applies to our lives today. When we give God our first and our best, it shows him that we value him above all else. It's not about the amount, but the heart. It's about putting God first in every area of our lives. In addition to the first fruits, the Israelites were also commanded to give a tithe. This practice was deeply embedded in their culture and spiritual life. A tithe is a tenth of their produce and livestock. This meant that every 10th animal or portion of their harvest was set aside for God. The tithe was a reminder that everything they had belonged to God. It was a tangible expression of their faith and dependence on him. He was the ultimate owner, and they were merely stewards of his blessings. This understanding fostered a sense of humility and gratitude among the people. Giving a tithe was an act of obedience and worship. It was a way to show reverence and acknowledge God's sovereignty over their lives. It was a way for the Israelites to acknowledge God's ownership and to thank him for his provision. By giving back a portion of what they received, they demonstrated their trust in God's continued blessings. This principle is still relevant today. Just as the ancient Israelites recognized God's ownership, we too are called to do the same in our lives. When we tithe, we are acknowledging that God is the owner of everything we have. It is a practice that transcends time and culture, reminding us of our role as stewards. It's a way of honoring him with our finances and trusting him to provide for our needs. Tithing is not just about giving money, it's about recognizing God's provision and expressing our faith in his promises. By setting aside a portion of our income, we are making a conscious decision to prioritize our relationship with God. It is a spiritual discipline that shapes our hearts and aligns our priorities with his. Through tithing, we also contribute to the work of the church and the broader community, supporting ministries and helping those in need. It is a collective effort that reflects God's love and generosity. Ultimately, tithing is a powerful reminder that everything we have is a gift from God. It is an act of worship that deepens our faith and strengthens our connection to him. Section 5. The Levites, foreigners, orphans and widows, sharing God's blessings. Deuteronomy 26 also emphasizes the importance of caring for the less fortunate. The Israelites were instructed to share their blessings with the Levites, foreigners, orphans and widows. These groups of people were often overlooked and marginalized in society. God specifically instructed the Israelites to care for them and provide for their needs. This commandment reminds us that our blessings are not just for ourselves. We are called to be generous and to share what we have with those in need. It's about reflecting God's love and compassion to those around us. Section 6. Obedience and Blessings, a Covenant Relationship. Deuteronomy 26 highlights the covenant relationship between God and his people. God promises to bless his people if they obey his commands. Obedience is not about earning God's favor. It's about aligning ourselves with his will and experiencing the fullness of life he desires for us. This principle is evident throughout the Bible. When God's people obey his commands, they experience his blessings. When they disobey, they face consequences. Section 7. Deuteronomy 26 in modern times, cultivating a grateful heart. The principles of Deuteronomy 26 are timeless. They are just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. We may not be bringing baskets of fruit to the temple, but we can still cultivate a heart of gratitude. We can thank God for his blessings in our lives, both big and small. We can honor God with our first and our best, whether it's our time, talents, or finances. We can also practice generosity by sharing our blessings with others, especially those in need. Section 8. Gratitude, a pathway to joy and contentment. Gratitude is more than just saying thank you. It's a heart attitude that recognizes and appreciates the goodness of God in our lives. When we cultivate a grateful heart, we experience more joy and contentment. We focus on what we have, not on what we lack. Gratitude shifts our perspective. It helps us see the world through a lens of abundance rather than scarcity. It's a powerful antidote to negativity, envy, and discontentment. Section 9. The power of giving. Transforming lives, including our own. Giving is not just about meeting the needs of others, it's about transforming our own hearts. When we give generously, we experience the joy of being a blessing to others. Giving breaks the power of materialism and greed in our lives. It reminds us that true wealth is not measured by what we possess, but by what we give away. Section 10. Conclusion. Living a life of gratitude and generosity. Deuteronomy 26 calls us to live a life of gratitude and generosity. It's a reminder that everything we have comes from God. When we recognize this truth, it changes how we live. We become more thankful, more generous, and more aware of God's presence in our lives. May we embrace the principles of Deuteronomy 26 and experience the joy of living in covenant relationship with our generous God. Let's make gratitude a way of life.